Sometime between 1963 and 1965, two twin babies, Jack and Jill, are separated. Jack is abandoned in front of a department store in New Jersey, and to this day, we still don't know what happened to Jill. But Jack and Jill's story doesn't end there. Jack is raised as Paul Fronczak and doesn't learn his true identity until he's an adult when he takes a DNA test. Not only does Jack discover that he was a twin, but it also leads to another mysterious missing child case. I wanted to note here that while I was asked to spotlight this case, I implore you to please go follow the Fronczak Files on TikTok and hear the story from Paul himself. I'm going to do a quick recap of his case, his sister Jill, and baby Paul, but please go visit the socials and the podcast to get the full story and the latest updates. I will link them in the description. Paul Fronczak grew up in Chicago, always feeling a bit out of place. He didn't really look like his younger brother, and he didn't look like his parents. He always had a sense that something wasn't right. When he was 10 on the hunt for Christmas gifts in a crawl space, he came across a box of old newspaper clippings that featured a baby boy named Paul. At just 2 days old, he had been kidnapped from the Michael Reese Hospital in 1964. There were also newspapers featuring the story of the now toddler Paul, who was abandoned over 800 miles away in New Jersey, being reunited with his parents. Paul quickly realized that these news clippings were about him. In 2012, Paul, now married with his own child living in Las Vegas, asked his parents to take a DNA test, and they reluctantly agreed. The DNA proved without a doubt that the Fronczaks were not his biological parents, which meant he was not baby Paul. So who was he, and where was baby Paul? Paul became obsessed with learning his true identity, but wouldn't you? After extensive research, he was eventually able to work with investigative genetic genealogist C.C. Moore, who built out a family tree based on his DNA, and that eventually led him to his true identity. Jack Rosenthal. He also learned that he had a twin sister named Jill. Jack, who still goes by Paul, would speak with some family members from his biological family and learn that Jack and Jill were abused and neglected as children. And they now learned that Jack had been left in a parking lot in Newark, New Jersey, but nobody knows Jill's fate. He learned that both of his parents, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal, were deceased, and he had other siblings, but they didn't want to speak with him. So how exactly did Jack end up over 800 miles away being raised as Paul Fronczak? Let's go back to 1964 when Paul Fronczak was just 1 day old and a woman dressed as a nurse came in and kidnapped him from the hospital. This was one of Chicago's biggest manhunts, the search for baby Paul, but he was nowhere to be found in the city. Then, in 1965, when a little boy is found abandoned in a New Jersey parking lot, a policeman remembers seeing the story about little Paul. They didn't have DNA testing back then, so they used a picture of baby Paul and compared his ears to the little boy they found in New Jersey, and they were confident they had found baby Paul. Back then, they believed that ear shapes were just as unique as fingerprints, and they had a match. So Jack was raised as Paul, and despite having a happy childhood, he always felt